Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Naruto hasn't been happy since the fourth great ninja war had ended. Once the war was over and the beasts were free, everything went to shit. The nations had betrayed his trust. They sealed away the halves of the Biju again and bound him in chakra-resistant chains. The only Biju he drew in fully was Kurama again, as he would not let that bastard Sasuke hold him. Apparently not anyone could hold any Biju, and Sasuke was the only one who could hold Kurama. He also made sure to draw in the Biju's souls, so even if they had them inside they couldn't be controlled or used. The only ones there for him was Tsunade, Gaara and Shizune, as they didn't betray him. They made sure he didn't die of starvation from being caged in a dungeon. The only reason they locked him up was because they couldn't hold him down with seals due to the Biju's overpowering it. But without chakra or the Biju cloak he was stuck. But unbeknown to the others, with Tsunade's help he was overriding the seal to the chains and to his own seal. He needed to break the chain seal first and then he'd draw in the halves of the Biju. He knew the risks, but the Biju all agreed to it, rather than let their power be out of their grasps once again. Naruto sighed. You all ready? He asks the Biju. Hell yeah, Kit. Let it rip. Kurama says, giving him a mental fist bump. No matter what happens, Kit, we thank you for helping and befriending us, he says before Naruto smiles and sets to work. He takes a deep breath and focuses the little Biju chakra he could access, as he had been storing it up for over a year and a half, and even then it wasn't much. He hoped it worked. He took a deep breath and sent it rocketing through the chains. They shattered under the immense weight of the demonic energy. He took ragged breaths and drew forth his cloak form and frowned as he felt multiple energy sources coming to him. He needed to rush. He ran through the hand seals the Biju had drilled into him and slammed his hands on the ground. Sage art. Attraction of the tails. He called out as he erupted in even more golden flames. A matter of seconds later, chakra of numerous colors crashes into him. That was when it all went to crap. The energy collided too quickly, and instead of just fusing the halves of the 9 into wholes, it made the 9 fuse back into 1. He was unintentionally reforming the Jubi. He tried to stop it, but it was too strong. Kurama and everyone else, I'm so sorry, he says in a somber tone. Kurama lets out a sad chuckle. We don't blame you, kid. We knew the risks, but as long as you were in control we don't mind, he says before their personalities meld back into the Jubi. Naruto struggles to hold control as the golden flames turn silver and horns grow from his forehead like the sage of the 6 paths. He opened his eyes to see Sasuke and the village leaders minus Tsunade and Gaara in front of him. Beast, get back in your chains. And release the Biju, we know you took them, Onoki says as he hovers near A and Mei. Naruto lets out a sad chuckle. Can't do that, as I promised I'd guard them and they aren't here anymore, he says as he looks to them forming his cloaked form, which was the same from his cloaked form when he originally held all the Biju, but his horns that he just grew became larger and his eyes changed, not that he could see but the others could. Sasuke glared at him with pure hate. Naruto's eyes were a more perfected version of his Sharingan, Rinnegan eye. Even though it had been 3 years since gaining this eye, he had made no progress in unlocking any of their Rinnegan abilities. Naruto stood up to them and glared at them. You abused mine and the Biju's trust. You sealed them up again and chained me up for 3 goddamn years, all because you were power-hungry cowards. He yells at them, unconsciously making the Tomo spin in his eyes. Not only that, but you made me pull them in and cause them to disappear into the Jubi. So either leave me be or I will end you. He yells, glaring with full malice at the group in front of him. The ninja behind the cages were struggling to stand under the killer intent in front of them. Sasuke draws his sword and summons his eyes, only to find massive pain in his left eye, but he shook it off. Dobi, you were too weak with those beasts and you dared take away my chance to use that fox of yours. Oh well, I'll just rip the Jubi and use it, he says as he charges him. Naruto in the blink of an eye ends up behind Sasuke and hits Sasuke with an insanely powerful kick. He was grateful Tsunade taught him her super strength as he was chained up, though this was his first time using it actually, but thankfully his chakra control was better than it was when he and Kurama butted heads back when he was young. Sasuke gets sent through the underground building and he looks to the cages and flares the Jubi's chakra. He was confused why it was being so complacent, but he'd cross that bridge once he got out of here and away from the village. He summoned the truth-seeking orbs and 2 chakra rods just in time to block against A's lighting lariat. He ducked under the strike and landed 2 hits on the Raikage's chest, sending him flying into Mei. He sees Onoki flying towards him with a dust release in his hands. He fires 3 truth-seeking orbs at the man to negate the dust release and send him crashing back. He flattened another to create a shield against the lava shot that Mei fired at him. He then summoned the Shikuho to block Sasuke's sword. Sasuke glared at him. Amaterasu. He yells, trying to burn the Dobi's legs off, but is shocked when the flames don't come out. In fact, it hurts his head greatly to even try. Why was his Sharingan acting up, and why couldn't he use his Sharingan, Rinnegan Fusion Eye? Naruto noticed that Sasuke was only using one arm as the other was hanging limply from his side and half of his face was soaked in blood. Seemed the one hit he landed damaged him greatly. He didn't really want to kill anyone here, just incapacitate them. He evaded the strikes, confused why everyone was so slow. These were supposed to be top-tier shinobi, but to him they were as fast as Genin. He ducked under dual strikes from A and Sasuke and landed a palm strike on the 2, sending them rocketing back again. He dashed after A and grabbed his ankle and swung him towards Onoki with great speed, shocking the man as they both crashed through the building again. All he needed to do was take out Mei and then he could run. He summoned the orbs around his hand and spiraled them into a drill and hit Mei with great speed. She tried to use lava to protect her, but the truth-seeking orbs negated it. She fired out through wall and Naruto quickly left out the underground base. He had been trapped under the Leaf Village where the root headquarters used to be. He summoned clones to help find a way out, but after a couple minutes he grew tired and summoned a Rasenshuriken and fired it at the ceiling in the large training area he found himself at. The ceiling exploded and revealed the sky above him, but before he could fly out he had to dodge a large arrow made of fire and purple energy. He looked over and frowned at Sasuke standing in his Tengu Susanoo with a bleeding holding up an unconscious Mei. Onoki was limping greatly. Dobi, we won't let you escape. Those beasts are to be used as weapons. That idiotic sage didn't know what he was doing, he said as he drew out 2 swords and dashed towards Naruto. Naruto noticed his Susanoo was faster as he dodged the slashes and fired truth-seeking orbs at Sasuke. They seemed to weaken its armor as it was slowly getting slower. Naruto changed one orb into a familiar blade, the blade of Zabuza, Kubikiribocho. He swung the blade down and severed an arm of the Susanoo. He jumped up and slashed at the forehead where Sasuke was and shattered it and hit Sasuke fast and hard straight in the face, sending him crashing through the back of his Susanoo. I dashed at him again, but Naruto ducked underneath it and hit his elbow, shattering his elbow and kicked him hard in the chest, crashing him into Onoki again. He sighed as Mei was still unconscious. This was his chance. He flew upwards and out of the underground base and looked out to see a new massive village. Turned out he wasn't under the Leaf Village, he was under a brand new village that seemed to have pieces of each village. Maybe he was under there for more than 3 years, with the progress they made in a joint village he didn't quite know. He lowered down on the building that had the fire symbol on it and eased out of his cloaked form to find his horns still there. He didn't mind, but it would take some getting used to. Luckily it was the dead of night, so not many saw him. He sneaked his way in. He needed to find Tsunade. He sneaked around the building as he knew any Anbu that saw him wouldn't report it to Tsunade but to the others, as she was the only one besides Gaara and Shizune that tried to help him. He eventually found her behind her desk drinking sake. He chuckled mentally at her and lowered from his hiding spot. Oba-chan, he says with a smile, making her jump and smile happily once she saw him. She hugged him tightly and cried silently, "Brat, don't scare me like that. I'm glad you finally got out," she says, patting his cheek. He smiled as she passes him a scroll. He opens it and unseals the contents to see clothes and his necklace she had given him. She turns around for him to change. He now wore black cargo pants with an orange shirt and long-sleeve black jacket and black shinobi sandals. The necklace was proudly displayed on around his neck and his headband was around his waist as his new set of horns kind of made it difficult to wear it on his forehead. Tsunade turned around and frowned once she saw his forehead and eyes. "Naruto, what happened?" she asks as she activates the privacy seals in her office. He sits down and starts explaining everything that happened from him breaking out to the point where he got here. She nodded. Well, that explains the eyes and horns, she says, confusing him. What about my eyes? He asks, looking for a mirror. She hands him a small one and nearly dropped it when he looked in it. Gone were his blue eyes, and now were two pure red orbs with concentric circles with 9 tomo in total. He had the Jubi's eyes, not Sasuke's version, which was purple, but the true Shinju eyes. Wow, that is shocking, he says as he sits down. Another thing, the Jubi isn't fighting for any kind of control, it seems almost calm in me, he says to her. She sighs and nods. Yes, I can explain that, but I think you should go to Mindscape to see it first, as it will probably explain it a lot better, she says, pouring another glass of sake. He looks confused but sighs and nods. Fine, but if I show any signs of losing control, hit me hard, okay, he says, getting a nod from Tsunade. He sits down in a meditative stance and fades into his mindscape. Mindscape. He frowned as his mindscape had changed yet again. Now it was a massive clearing full of trees, but the most noticeable tree was the gigantic on he hadn't seen since the fourth shinobi was. This time it was fully bloomed and the moon reflected the Shinju eye on it. He walked around the clearing until he heard a tremendous boom behind him. He turned around to see a giant 10-tailed wolf looking down at him. "Ah, so you finally came to visit," it says with a grin. The weird part was that it wasn't a menacing grin, it seemed almost kind. He stepped back. Jubi? He asks, confused. Last he saw the Jubi was not a wolf. If anything, it was a weird human, slug thing, or in Kagaya's case a badger of some kind. The wolf huffs. "My name is Shinju, mind you, and I am the 10-tailed wolf," it says as it walks over to the massive blooming tree. "But I thought you were a weird human slug badger thing," he says as he cautiously follows. He then is confused more as he hears the Jubi, now named Shinju, laughing. "Oh boy, that was my incomplete form. What I take when others try to draw my power for impure reasons. It's been a long time since I've been united with my true soul again. Since I am back together, my true form is back, and boy does it feel good to have my fur again," he says as he waves his tails. "Wait, I'm really confused. Tsunade Ba-chan told me to talk to you as you'd explain everything," he says, making the wolf look at him with his red eyes. It sighed. "Figured she'd shove the duty onto me. Okay, listen up, kid, I really wanna explain this just once," he says, getting Naruto's attention. He sat down in front of the wolf and got ready to listen. The wolf nodded. "Long ago my soul was in your mother. Now I'll explain how I know your mother in a bit, so don't interrupt," he says, stopping Naruto from speaking. He pouts but lets him continue. "Now my soul had been with your mother for a long time, as she took her mortal aspect of Kushina Uzumaki so she could bring peace. But she eventually changed her mind when she met your father. Then Obito happened. He spat out the name like venom. When he attacked and released the fraction of me and killed your parents, she transferred my true soul into you as a last will. I worked to keep the Kyuubi Kurama at bay while you were little, and even helped you by giving you little bursts of strength at times," he says, looking up at the sky. "But then that man Madara," he says with worse venom than when he mentioned Obito, "he reformed me without my soul, making my power a soulless husk and full of uncontrolled raging power. Now yes, they took control over it, but in no way did they have full power over me. Then he tainted your mother when she resurrected and made it so she didn't even notice her own son," he says with pure hatred in his voice. Naruto was following it so far. Apparently his mother had attracted Shinju's soul and gave it to him, but the major part that he was confused at was when he mentioned Madara bringing her back. "Wait, when did I fight my mother?" he asks, seriously confused. The Shinju sighs, but not in annoyance, more upset or sad. "Kid, before I tell you, just know this. Madara was the avatar for her to use to revive herself. His soul was so evil and dark it tainted her so badly that it broke her mind. Now if I was able to connect to her, I could fix her," he says, getting a nod of acknowledgement from the boy. He takes a deep breath. "You are the son of Minato Namikaze and Kagaya Otsutsuki," he says, dropping a bombshell on Naruto. He stands up quickly. "What? How can that even be? My mother is Kushina Uzumaki." He yells in shock. Shinju sighs. "Yes, you are, as Kushina was her mortal aspect that she took as she was trapped. She used it originally to try and reform me, but only got the 9-tailed part. She then met your father and fell in love and saw how he could bring peace without using the infinite Tsukuyomi. Your father knew who she truly was and still loved her. The only ones who knew of it was him and Tsunade, as Tsunade was her best friend," he explains, making Naruto rub his temples. So I am apparently the son of a goddess and I fought against her and trapped her in a moon-like construct, he says, finishing it in a defeated and sad tone, trying to keep tears back. Shinju frowned. Kid, remember Madara had messed with her when she inadvertently used him to revive herself. If we can get back to where she is, I can break her out and even fix her easily, he says, calming Naruto. Naruto nods and wipes the tears. Do you know how to get there? He asks. Shinju huffs. Of course. I am the great primordial Shinju, the god tree. Give me an hour or so and I can track her energy and we can use your new eyes to warp there. But first I want my gift back from this vile world. I want my chakra back. Tsunade, Shizune and that Gaara boy can keep it as they are kind and even helped you when others tried to imprison you. After all you did for them, it's disgusting how everyone repaid you, he says, glaring off into the distance. Naruto sighs. Maybe it's for the better. How do I do it? He asks as two of Shinju's tails tap his palms to reveal both sage markings, sun on right and crescent moon on left. Tap them with each marking and it'll protect them from the technique. Also the sun mark will still heal others greatly and the moon mark will help create seals and even make warp points, he says as Naruto nods. Thanks Shinju. Do you want me to release you after we save my mom? He asks. Shinju contemplates it for a moment but shakes his head. Nah, what kind of grandfather would I be if I didn't spend time with my grandson, he says, making Naruto crash down in shock. Grandpa, he says, shocked. Shinju chuckles. Yup, Kagaya is the daughter of myself and the Shinto goddess Amaterasu. I'll fill you in on all that later, he says as Naruto gets up. Well, that's a lot to take in the span of an hour or so, he says, making Shinju chuckle more. Just head back to Tsunade and mark her and the others and I will help you with the hand signs to take back chakra, he says as Naruto nods and fades from the mindscape. Outside world. Naruto opened his eyes to see Tsunade being berated by Shizune and Gaara bearing the door with sand as he could hear others banging on it from the outside. Shizune stopped once she noticed Naruto standing. She went over and hugged him. Naru-chan, I'm so glad you got free, she says with a smile as Gaara looked to him. As am I, Naruto, but you will excuse me from giving you a handshake as I am keeping the other ninjas from entering, he says in his calm tone. Naruto chuckles and tagged him with both hands, confusing him a bit. He then went and did the same to Tsunade and Shizune. Okay brat, what was that all for? Tsunade asks as she saw the marks on his hands. The Shinju apparently wants his chakra back but gave you 3 permission to keep it as you all looked out for me and tried to protect me, he says as Tsunade nods. Did he explain everything? She says, looking him in the eyes with a serious look on her face. He nods. Yes, and how Madara corrupted mom, he says, getting a nod from her. Shizune looks confused as does Gaara. I'll explain once I'm done, he says, getting nods from them. Ready Shinju? He asks, getting ready. Yay kid, just go into the cloaked form and I will take control over your arms, he says as Naruto bursts into his silver cloaked form. Naruto's arms run through a series of hand signs and then he slams them down. Great sage art. Uprooting of the gift. He yells out as the air colors to light blue, the color of chakra, as it all flows into Naruto. Just stay calm and I can handle the massive influx, he says as Naruto focuses on drawing it into him. He could hear outraged cries from all over as he drew in the last bit of chakra. He wished he could see the Tem's face when he realized he lost his precious eyes. Naruto turned to them and smiled. Gaara noticed the lack of attacks on the door and just kept his sand up there and sat down as he no longer needed to focus as much on it. Naruto then got to explaining everything to them. Shizune was a bit skeptical but Gaara believed his friend completely. He knew Naruto was not one to lie and the fact he used a sage art outside of sage mode spoke to the truth behind it. Tsunade turned to Shizune. Naruto speaks the truth. Sadly Kagaya was corrupted when she used Madara. But hopefully she will be able to be saved, she says, getting a nod from Naruto. Shinju is trying to find her energy signature or something and I am to use my eyes with his help to go to her. But first I want to grab some stuff, he says as he summons 10 clones. He turned to them. Go and grab what I have planned. If anyone gives you trouble just summon a Rasengan to scare them a bit, he says as they nod and dash of at high speeds. Naruto turns to them and smiles. Since no one has chakra except me and you three, I decided to grab some useful things. Most likely Shinju will influence a clone or two to grab some stuff he thinks I need as well, he says as they nod. An hour later, the clones return holding a massive storage scroll. Good job, guys. Just in time, Shinju said. He locked onto Mom, he says as he dispels the clones and straps the scroll to his back. The clones got everything he wanted and a few things he didn't know the Shinju even knew where they were. He turned to the group. You guys stay safe until I return, he says, getting a smack in the back of the head by Tsunade. Brat, we are strong shinobi and everyone else has no chakra. We'll be fine, just go save Kagaya and cure her. I miss my old friend, she says, getting a chuckle from Naruto. Ready, Shinju? He asks as he goes into his cloaked form and activates his new eyes. Of course, let's go save my daughter and your mother, he says as he causes Naruto's eyes to spin. Naruto focuses his chakra into his eyes. Kamui. He calls out, creating a tear in front of him. He leaps through multiple tears layered up on themselves. When he reaches the end, it reveals himself standing before the massive moon he had inadvertently trapped his own mom in. Now what? He asks as he looks around and inspects the moon. You tag the moon thing with your marks and then you need to be fast and tag her before she wakes, Shinju says as he frowns at the moon. He still hated how his body is trapped in the moon. The only reason he went on a rampage in the first place was because those kids of hers got power hungry. Kagaya had made a deal that he would let his chakra flow for 3 years or until the war ended. After the war he tried to take it all back, but Hagoromo and Hamura got greedy and didn't want their power to go. Then everything went to shit as he was divided and Kagaya sealed. He shook off those thoughts and got back to helping Naruto. Naruto walked up to the moon and steeled his nerves. He tagged the moon and instantly it broke apart. He took to jumping into it and he saw his mother's body falling. He flew quickly towards her. Just before he got there, she opened her eyes. She was about to say something until Naruto tagged her on her shoulders. Instantly the whole moon was shot apart. As was he as he was sent flying back quite forcefully. Did I get her? He asks as he groans and gets up. Shinju nodded. Yes, you did, kid. This is her godly aura returning to her and her regaining her own body, he says as they see her float down from the sky. Her hime kimono was completely fixed, as was her arm. He could see that Zetsu's eyes glaring at him from her sleeve. Mother, that boy is back, should I kill him? It asks only to be shocked as his mother hugs the boy tightly to her chest, crying heavy tears. Sochi. She cries as Naruto cries and hugs her back. It is okay, Mom. Shinju told me everything. I'm so sorry for hurting you, he says, petting her head as he cried. She pulls away. Dad. Is he inside you? She asks. He nods and gets to explaining everything that happened for nearly the 3rd time today. She frowned. I'm so sorry you had to suffer so much. But it's all over now. Peace is there as no one has chakra anymore and will never wield it ever again, she says, getting a nod from him. Mother. The Zetsu says from her sleeve. What is going on? Why are you calling him your son? It asks, confused. Kagaya frowns as she forgot that Zetsu was in her sleeve. Remember Naruto I told you about when you were young? She asks, getting the blob to move from her sleeve and nod. Well, this is him. The only reason neither of us noticed was because Madara infected us, but don't worry, your brother forgives you. Don't you, Sochi? She asks in a kind tone. Naruto nods. Sorry about everything. If I knew you were my brother, in a sense I wouldn't have fought you too, but as she said, it's all better now, he says, holding out a fist. The Zetsu looks cautious but bumps fists back. Kagaya smiles and hugs her son again. I missed you so much, Sochi. Now let's get back and see Tsunade and maybe cause some mischief. I seem to have gotten that from my Kushina's side, she says as she opens a tear as they walk through Tsunade's office. Once in the office, Shizune steps back in shock as Tsunade gets up to hug her friend. Gaara smiles softly, glad to see his best friend have his mother again. Moments later, a flash of light fills the room and a woman with dark black hair is standing before them. She wore a blood-red kimono with a black obi. On her waist was 2 swords on her was. The first one has a black sheath with a golden hexagonal guard and white clothed handle. The other had a very dark red, almost black sheath with a black clothed handle. Its guard reminded them of the Sharingan as it had 3 commas meeting together with their ends pointing outwards as a black ring connected the ends. Kagaya smiles at the woman as she hugs her close. Mom. She says, smiling as the woman smiles back. Oh Kagaya dear, I'm so glad you are back to being the darling girl I gave birth to, she says as Naruto stares in confusion until he hits his fist on his open palm as if to say he figured it out. Amaterasu. He says, proud to remember that bit of info. The woman turns to him and squeals as she hugs him, burying his face in her generous chest. So you are my grandchild that holds my husband and saved my daughter, she says, nearly suffocating him before Kagaya pulls her off. Mother, stop suffocating my child, she says, glaring at her. Amaterasu frowns. Fine, yes, I am the Shinto goddess Amaterasu, goddess of the sun, creation and all that good stuff, but first I want to reward my adorable grandchild for saving my realm. She hears grumbling from Naruto's stomach, not his hunger, it sounded like a person. She sighs. Fine darling, our realm. The grumbling stops. She thinks for a second before donning a look as if to say a light bulb went off in her head. She takes her swords out from her sash and hands them to him. Here, since the Shintos have made peace amongst themselves, I have no need for my swords anymore. Plus, since we are the leaders of heaven, peace has been in all pantheons, except for one, she says the last part in a quiet tone. Naruto looks at the blades. Are you sure? He asks as he holds them in his hands. Of course, as one. They will help you gain power over your new eyes abilities, and two. What kind of grandma would I be if I didn't spoil my grandchild, she says with a smile. Naruto smiles. Yesterday he had no one but Tsunade, Shizune and Gaara. But now he had a mother, a grandmother and a grandfather. He wipes away tears. Thanks Oba-chan, he says, getting another squeal from the goddess. Kagaya holds her back from glomping her son again. She collects herself and clears her throat. I might as well explain the blades. The one with the golden guard is named Yamato. That blade represents my sun aspect, as well as it should help boost your Rinnegan abilities as it has some power over space from when it was blessed by another deity. The red sheathed blade represents the aspect forced on me, the black flames of the Sharingan. Its name is Ten no Kuroi Hano, literally meaning the black flame of heaven. It will help you with the Sharingan aspects, and the flame will only burn what you want instead of everything, she says with a kind smile. Naruto stares in shock at the blades as he straps them to his sides. Why are you giving me such powerful blades? He asks, confused. She smiles sadly a bit. Well, you see, I sort if need your help, honey, she says, confusing him. You see, there is only one pantheon that has been giving us all trouble. It is the Greco-Roman pantheon. For eons they have had overthrows of power, and that bastard Zeus has even tried to fight me and the others for the throne of heaven when the Shintos were voted to rule over unanimously. It is we have had peace the longest, with only the recent trouble the only trouble we've seen in eons. Sure, there were ninja wars, but nothing involving my husband ever before, she explains to him. He sighs as he figures where this is going. You want me to go there and help them out with their trouble? He asks, getting a nervous nod from her. Naruto groans and sits down. Fine, but I want something to make sure no one will zap me for being there. And what about mom? He asks, getting a warm smile from Amaterasu. Well, one, you are immortal from holding my husband in you, and considering you are 3/4 part god, plus my blessing will keep Zeus from zapping you, she explains, but your mom will be needed in heaven for some time, but she will visit and Black Zetsu will stay with you to stay in contact with her, and since he isn't a god, he isn't really allowed there, she says, getting the blob to grumble but accept. Kagaya frowns. You want my son to go to the Greeks' realm, without the originator's permission, and help bring peace. You know how guarded they are against outsiders and beings from different pantheons, she says, making Amaterasu sigh and nod. Lady Chaos gave me permission to send 3 people over, Naruto, Zetsu and Shinju. And I have a backstory all set up thanks to a bet I made and won against her. Naruto will be a pseudo-son of Chaos, in name only, no blessing. He will keep Zetsu and Shinju silent, as that would take a lot of explanation and would break the illusion, but that doesn't mean he can't use the cloak or eyes, as Chaos has many tremendous powers, she says, creating a cup of tea and sits down. Naruto will have free roam around her realm and permission to do as he wishes as long as it doesn't cause too much trouble, she says with a knowing smirk that makes him embarrassed. Also, he will get the correct knowledge of that realm, as sending you into new territory with no info is incredibly dangerous, she says, calming Kagaya's nerves. Kagaya nods and holds her son's hand and to transfer Zetsu into the sleeves of his jacket. You be safe Sochi and don't be afraid to use Zetus to send me a message, he will always be able to go to me, even if I am in heaven. The message will get to me before he needs to leave, she explains, getting a nod from him. She tears up and kisses his forehead. Be safe Sochi, I just got you back, I don't want to lose you, she says, stroking his whisker marks. Don't worry mom, we'll get time to hang out since I'm immortal apparently, he says with a smile. Kagaya nods as Amaterasu chimes in, plus once he is done here he will be easily made a god, we just need him as a demigod until he fixes everything to come. When that happens he will gain his godhood, she says, making Kagaya smile brightly. Finish soon so we can be a family again, she says, kissing his cheek once more. Naruto chuckles at his mother and nods. I'll do my best, he says as he turns to his grandmother. So when do I need to leave? He asks as he adjusts his jacket to give Zetsu more space. Amaterasu flashes away her cup and stands, clapping her hands with a smile. Right now, so say bye to your friends honey, she says, stepping away, waiting for him near a portal she created. He turns to Gaara and extends a hand. Try and keep everyone in line Gaara, at least you could keep your sand your mother gave you, he says, making reference to the magnet release his actual mother gave him and not Shukaku. Gaara smiled and shaked his friend's hand. Try and stay out of trouble Naruto, I don't want my friend to pass on, he says, making Naruto chuckle and rub the back of his neck. Shizune smiled and hugged him close. Stay safe Naruto and maybe find a good girl, she says, winking as she kisses his forehead. He chuckled and went to Tsunade. You have a grandmother so no grandma crap from you, she says with a smirk. Okay auntie, he says, flashing his trademark grin. Tsunade chuckles. Better than grandma. Keep safe out there and don't be afraid to send a summon over to keep contact, she says as she kisses his forehead as well. Naruto says one last goodbye before turning to his grandmother. I'm ready, where will I be arriving at? He asks, curious. Amaterasu smiles. You will be arriving outside their camp, don't worry chaos will claim you later, she says as she touches his scroll, causing it to glow for a second. I merely modified a few things in there and added some things also, my blades won't have any trouble destroying creatures in this realm, she says before hugging him, confusing him a bit, but he'll figure it out later. Thank you for agreeing to this honey, I'll be watching over you as will your mother, she says with a smile as Naruto nods and heads through the portal. Camp Half-Blood. He looked around to see himself in a forest. He stood up from a crouch and dusted off his pants and looked at Zetsu. Look, about everything I said to you before, I'm sorry about that. I didn't know you were a sibling of mine or something, he says, nervous. Zetsu sighs. Relax, I understand the situation, I just didn't realize you to be my mother's son. You gave off no aura like mother or any similarities, he says, closing his eyes. How about a new start? Forget the past. He asks him. Naruto smiles and nods. I'd like that, and the next time I get I'll find something with bigger sleeves, he says, getting a chuckle from Zetsu. Watch out Naruto. There are a mass of creatures nearby, he says, getting Naruto's attention as he walks through the forest. He frowned as he saw two massive beasts with one eye each wielding clubs in front of 4 kids, 2 males and 2 females. The oldest male has short blonde hair, the other has scraggly brown hair and what seemed to be goat legs. The oldest female had short black hair with electric blue eyes while the other had wavy blonde hair and gray eyes. They weren't just up against the Cyclops, the name of the beasts according to the knowledge his grandmother gave him. He could see hellhounds, Stymphalian birds and even the 3 furies flying above them. He activated his eyes to read their auras. The 2 blondes weren't too strong of an aura, but the black-haired girl had a massive aura of electricity. The only god he could think of with lightning was Zeus, but according to his knowledge he wasn't supposed to have a kid. Having all this knowledge instantly confused him, but he'd get used to it. He could hear thunder rumbling above him and he frowned as Zeus made no effort to even help in the slightest, and he glared daggers as he saw the people from the apparent demigod camp just staring and not helping. This is bullshit. How can they not try to help? He thinks, angry. Shinju sighs. Greeks are very hands-off with parenting. They basically throw their kids to the wolves. The few times a Shinto god or goddess has a demigod child, we look after or kind and protect them when they cannot. We make sure they train and survive. They expect their kids to survive on their own with no help. Saddens me, he says with a frown. Naruto growls. Well, screw that, I'm not letting these kids die, he says, making Shinju smile as he goes into his cloaked form and appears before the kids. They stare at him in shock. He looks at them. Relax, kids. Just get to camp. One can take care of these nuisances, he says, forming his truth-seeking orbs and creating the Shikuho. The beast stepped back from feeling the power in front of him. Will my truth-seeking orbs be able to kill the monsters? He asks Shinju. He shrugs his shoulders. Might as well as try. If not, use those blades my wife gave you, he says, getting a nod from Naruto. He dashes with great speed and swings the Shikuho at a hellhound, sending it crashing into 3 others, killing them from the immense impact. He turns to the Furies above him. They were in range, so he fired the orbs at them, killing 2, and the third fell from the sky. He dodged swings from the Cyclops and lunges from the other hounds. He kicks one hard in the face into the Cyclops, killing the hound and toppling over the huge monster. He sent more orbs out, killing the metal birds that flew around him. He held up a hand to catch a club strike and shattered it in his hands. Amaterasu, he calls out in his head, making one burst into black flames and then golden dust as the flame died down. He panted as he wasn't used to using his new eyes. Focus on using what you know, kid. Using your eyes will just tire you out, Shinju points out. Naruto groans and fires 3 more orbs at a Cyclops, sending them straight through it, turning it to dust. He saw the last Fury appear in the clearing. Who are you, lowly demigod? You are interfering with Lord Hades' work. That child must die, she says, lashing out her whip. He catches it without missing a step or even being burned. Why must she die? Because of the sins of her father. That is an idiotic reason, and you know it, so leave before I kill you, he says, releasing a massive amount of ki. The Fury pauses in shock. This demigod stopped her whip and showed no signs of being hurt. Not even the children of the Forger could be immune of the flames of hell. She let out a whistle and called forth more beasts and smirked. You can't defeat this many, so just die, she says, making Naruto chuckle. Who says I can't copy myself? He says, putting his hands in the familiar cross form. Shadow clone, he says, creating 100 of himself, all in cloaked form. He charges a Rasenshuriken and smirked as the clones set out to destroy the others. I will not let her die for the sins of Zeus. Die, he yells, throwing the Rasenshuriken. The Fury tries to dodge, but one of his clones hold her down, killing her in a massive explosion. He looks to see the other monsters all dead. He walks up the hill, going out of his cloaked form, and turned off his eyes. Just as he saw the black-haired girl walk towards him with a smile, the clouds rumbled and a lightning bolt struck her, turning her to a tree. He stared in shock at the tree. Did that seriously just happen? Zeus turned his daughter into a tree. He thinks in rage. Shinju himself was enraged as well. Kid, you need to use your human path and take her out. Screw Zeus, he yells in rage at the Greek's actions. Naruto nods, but an idea pops in his head. Do I really need to be here? And even if I take her out in front of everyone, Zeus will just imprison her again. I can leave a clone of her so they are none the wiser and use my aura to cover hers, he explains, getting a massive grin from Zetsu and Shinju, as Zetsu was linked to Naruto as well. Nice plan, kid. Do it, he says, getting agreement from Zetsu as well. He walks in the camp and glares at the centaur. Why the hell did Zeus trap his own daughter? He yells, flaring his ki. Chiron takes a step back. Look, son, I fear it was his punishment for breaking the vow, he says, regretting it the moment after as the ki increased. His punishment was to kill his daughter. That's fucked up, he yells, covering the ears of the short crying blonde girl. Chiron frowns. Who are you? He asks. My name is Naruto Otsutsuki, he says as a black symbol appears before him. It was of the Milky Way and it was spinning in the symbol, and I'm a son of chaos, the primordial goddess of creation and the universe among other things, he says, glaring at the horseman. Chiron paled at what was before him, a son of the primordial mother to all that hadn't been seen in eons, the same boy who destroyed a massive army of beasts like it was nothing. The boy whose rage had caused numerous kids to pass out. He noticed the 2 blades at his side and the scroll on his back. He could feel great power from the blades, like they were a god themselves. Look, I'm sure she's okay. Merely stuck in there, he says, backing away from the dark blue eyes that glared at him. You better hope she's okay or I'm kicking Zeus' ass, he says as a lightning bolt fires down only for him to catch it and crush it in his hands, shocking everyone around him. Gonna have to try more than that asshole. he says as the clouds quickly dissipate. He turned back to Chiron. So what cabin am I staying at? He says, glaring at the man. He made sure not to let them know he was just going to take Talia out then leave to train the girl. Olympus. Zeus was not happy. Not only had an unknown man yelled at him for his actions, but he turned out to be the son of Chaos, the primordial mother to Gaia. The only reason he fired a bolt in the first place was he was tired of the ungrateful brat badmouthing him. But then something happened that shocked all the gods and goddesses in the room. He caught and crushed a bolt in his hands. Seconds after, a black vortex appeared before them, and a woman with mocha skin and a long dark gown that seemed to have moving designs of stars and galaxies on it. She had long silver hair and pure black star eyes. Zeus, I just claimed my son and you go and try and fire a bolt down on him. Do you want to be fated? She asks in a deadly tone, making the god of the sky cower slightly. He badmouthed me and I wouldn't let that stand, he says, trying to muster a confident tone only for an incredible pressure to crash down on him, shattering his throne like it was nothing. My son spoke his mind, something he has every right to when you idiotically trap your own daughter in a tree for no good reason other than Hades being sore, she says, turning to the death god who was there only to make sure the punishment was dealt. Controlling a prophecy never works, so this whole no kids from you three is idiotic and will only lead to more danger, which is why I called out my son for help. He has been away for many years and you will do your best to leave him be your fade, she says as she let up on Zeus's pressure. Zeus glares at her. What right do you have to command me? He yells, making all the others face palm. She was the creator of the universe and everything in it, she had every right. Chaos glares deadly at him and flicks her hand, breaking every bone in his body, and flicks it again to send him crashing through numerous columns. Zeus, you arrogant fool. I created this universe. I could take control from you all if I wanted to, but that would take my focus from my other worlds and the gods on there, she says, walking away. When he gets up and is healed, tell him I will be watching over my son, and if he tries anything he will fade. Consequences be damned, she says as she walks through the portal again. They all let out a breath of relief and frowned down at Zeus. Brother, you truly are an idiot, Poseidon says with a frown. Camp Half-Blood. Later that night, Naruto watched over from the big house as he couldn't stay anywhere else due to the whole "not your parent, you don't get stay in the cabin" crap. Being the son of Chaos didn't mean anything apparently. He wasn't even allowed in Hermes' cabin for some reason or another. He had met the three other kids he saved. The blonde male was Luke, son of Hermes. He could feel a lot of negative emotions rolling off him, but seeing your friend be trapped in a tree would do that to you. The other male was Grover the satyr, the watcher over them all. He had succeeded in his job but still felt terrible for what happened to Talia, the apparent name of the child of Zeus. Then there was the daughter of Athena, Annabeth. She was a very curious girl as he was asked a million questions about his powers and horns. He only answered that he got them from his mother, nothing more. She was upset at the loss of her friend, but Naruto assured them Talia was okay. When they asked how he knew, he told them he was a sage and could feel her life force in the tree. Satyrs and nymphs nearly jumped him, but he gave them a look saying, "Not the time." He sighed as he leaned over the railing. Curfew had been in effect an hour ago, but no harpies bothered him as his Ki made a few lay eggs in fear, or self-preservation. He didn't quite know. He left the house using his ninja skills and a clone stand-in so no one knew he was here. Perfect time to take her out. I can help you using the human path and safely extract her, body and all, but we will have to create a blood clone using her energy as a battery for it shortly after, or the asshole king would notice, he says as Naruto sneaks his way to the tree. Just because no one was out of their cabins didn't mean people wouldn't be looking from there. He arrived at the tree and activated his Shinju eyes. He could feel Shinju making them spin as he created an empty blood clone and laid a hand on the tree. Human path, he said mentally as he pulled the unconscious girl from the tree. He placed a hand on the clone and the girl and used himself as pathway for her energy to flow through, transforming the clone into another version of herself that would dispel sometime after being released. He eased the clone in the tree and picked up Talia. She was in a deep sleep. He needed to get her away from camp so she could explain everything. Hopefully he could be of help to the girl. Miles away from the camp, Naruto built a fire and set her down. As she was out cold, he decided it was time to look at what the clones grabbed. Grandma said that she modified them a bit. He was curious about that. He unsealed the massive scroll he had been carrying and saw scrolls of numerous affinities and even some of secondary and tertiary elements. Having all the nations together made gathering them so much easier. And since he bore the Shinju's eyes, he could use literally every element as the Shinju bore all chakra. Then he smiled at the next scroll in line. It read, Unique Swords, and contained all 7 swords of the Swordsman of the Mist as well as Orochimaru's sword and some other interesting swords he grabbed along the way. He unsealed them to notice they were now made of a bronze-steel mix. That is so you can kill monsters and anyone who tries to attack you, Shinju explains. I'll have to thank Grandma next time I see her, he thinks with a smile. He unsealed some clothes and chose to change his attire. Zetsu spilled out and sat next to the scroll. He kept the cargo pants and sandals, but he chose a sleeveless orange muscle shirt and a long baggy-sleeved kimono top that was black and closed it with an orange obi. The sleeves were baggy but didn't get in his way. Zetsu smiled and went back into his sleeve. Thank you. Much better, he says before closing his eyes. Naruto smiles and seals back up the clothes. He also found scrolls on the Sharingan and Rinnegan abilities as well as Kenjutsu stances. Those were bound to be very useful. He also noticed a wolf summoning contract as well as numerous other animals. Shinju must have done that. I did. With my eyes you can bear multiple contracts, and since those damn toads abandoned you since Konoha betrayed you and they couldn't fight against the village with you, I thought you should have a new contract so you can continue to channel nature chakra, as you can only do that with a summoning contract for it to flow through, he explains, bringing up a sore point for him. He sighed and would sign them later. He didn't feel like speaking to summons. Maybe he'd sign the copy of the slug one first so he could speak to Tsunade easier. He sealed everything up and sent a clone out to hunt as he overlooked the girl. He didn't want any beast attacking Talia with only a clone left behind. The clone ran off as he stared up at the moon above. Shinju, is your body in this moon as well? He asks. Shinju opens an eye and looks through Naruto's eyes. Yes, my body follows my spirit wherever it goes. Eventually I will leave your body once you become a god. Then I will remove my body from the moon, he explains. He was going to say more, but Talia started to stir. Her eyes fluttered open, and once she saw him she jumped back in shock. What am I doing here? Last I saw lightning hit me, she says with a frown. Naruto sighs. Yes, you were hit by your father. Don't say his name or else he will find us. He was punished for having you and his punishment was to trap you in a tree, he says, shocking the girl hard, but she frowned and held back tears. Naruto hugged the girl as she cried into his chest. Relax, Talia, I've decided to train you and take you away from that backwards camp. Just standing there as you all fought for your lives is stupid, he says, making her look up at him. You're going to train me? She asks, excited. He nods. Of course, and if you show promise I can give you a powerful gift and some powerful blades, he says, getting stars in her eyes. He smiled and let out a chuckle. First thing you have to answer a question, he says, getting her attention as a serious look gets on her face. Why do you fight? He asks in a wise tone. She thinks for a second then smiles warmly. I fight to protect those close to me and make it so no one has to lose another person close to them, she says, getting a massive grin from Naruto. Great. You pass. Now while we train, if you show great skill I can give you something maybe, he says, rubbing the back of his neck. Relax, kid, you can give others chakra with your son Mark. As long as they have pure hearts and minds like this girl it'll be fine, Shinju says, easing his worry. He turns to see his clone returning with rabbits as it starts to cook the food. After dinner we can start. I won't be an easy teacher, but I won't be brutal. I will push you to your max skill and make you exceed it, he says in a calm tone. Talia nods. I understand. I won't disappoint, she says, smiling with a look that reminded him of himself when he was a genin. He was definitely looking forward to this. Chapter 2. Naruto set his clone to work and unsealed some smaller clothes for the punk-dressed girl. She was annoyed at his lack of leather, but she got over it quickly as she found some clothes she called badass. She decided on a black trench coat with tight black jeans and a sleeveless gray shirt. He sealed her old clothes away as no use just leaving them behind. Who are you, by the way? You never told me your name as I was zapped into a tree before the greeting to the camp, she said with a frown as she had been curious about it since he never introduced himself. He chuckled as he rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly, a bit embarrassed that he hadn't introduced himself yet. My name is Naruto Otsutsuki. Sorry about not introducing myself sooner, things were a bit hectic, he said, flashing her his foxy grin as he chuckled. Weird name, who's your godly parent? She asked with a frown, incredibly curious as the blonde had abilities she had never seen with those weird orbs and cloning ability. Naruto frowned as he stroked his chin, thinking over if he should tell her his true heritage, consider he would be training her for the foreseeable future and wanted the girl to trust him. If she found out by someone else or by himself later on, she might feel betrayed and ruin the teacher-student relationship. Just do it, kid. You can make her swear on that river Styx to keep it safe from others knowing. Shinju chimed in as he had nothing real else to do inside Naruto, but he didn't mind. In his elder years he has become quite lazy. I will tell you as long as you swear on the river Styx to never mention it without my permission, he said as he smiled and looked towards Talia, making the girl look even more confused. Why would I need to swear on Styx just to know his godly parent? She thought, but then she remembered how he had Zeus angry at him. Fine, I swear on the river Styx not to tell anyone, she said as she sat on the log and looking towards the blonde, waiting for him to continue. You see, I am not from this pantheon. I am the grandchild of the goddess Amaterasu, the Shinto goddess, and the only Shinto primordial Shinju, as well as the son of Kagaya, the rabbit goddess, he said with a smile, shocking the punk girl. She had heard that the Shintos were powerful beings but incredibly peaceful. She heard from Grover and Annabeth that her father had fought them long ago and lost badly, so seeing a child of 3 strong beings surprised her. My grandma sent me here to help this pantheon under the guise of the son of chaos, he said, making her even more shocked, only to shake it off as if she kept getting surprised at everything. It was going to be tiring. So when does training start? She asks, moving on from the surprise and already excited to be trained by someone so strong. Most likely in the morning, as you have been through a lot today, he said as the clone finished up cooking the rabbits. Now eat up, Talia, you need the energy, he added as he unsealed the summon scrolls again. He knew he needed a contract to use Sage Mode and he was going to think about it, but he needed to ability to sense energy better than he already did. He looked them over to see wolves, slugs, hawks and foxes. Those were the only ones that actually got his interest. He grabbed the slug one and signed that one first since he knew most about the slugs and it would allow him to contact Tsunade. As Talia ate, he summoned a divided part of Katsuya. The small white and blue slug looked at him with what he swore was a smile on her face. Naruto, Tsunade-sama told us all what happened. The other summons are deeply disappointed in the toads and the villages. I am glad Tsunade-sama can still summon us. On behalf of the slugs, we accept you are our summoner, and since we are the first you have signed, nature chakra will channel though us. It is the same way as the toads, except your markings will change, she explained, as most likely Tsunade had already filled her in, as her calm caring tone made him smile. Thank you, Lady Katsuya. I will bear being your sage with honor, he said with a smile, making the slug giggle before dispelling. Katsuya had always been such a kind and caring summon, something he noticed from the few times he saw her, and he knew she could be devastating. He figured he'd sign the other contracts later as he needed to see how long it took to obtain Sage Mode in this new world. He couldn't help but chuckle as he saw Talia gaping in shock from him summoning a creature that could talk. I'll explain it to you later, as right now I need to do something important, he said as he sat in his meditative stance. The second he started, he felt something that upset him. Nature energy was very low and difficult to draw. He remembered that this realm had expanded in a larger scale than his old world had, so drawing nature energy would be more difficult. As he felt him enter Sage Mode, he stood up and walked over to the lake that was nearby to them. I'll explain everything, just give me a second, he said as he looked at himself on the reflection of the lake. He now had 2 light blue markings going from under his eyes down to his jawline. They were roughly an inch thick and wavy like the markings on Katsuya. He also had blue pigmentation on his eyelids like when back with the toads. He noticed his eyes were very different. They had pale blue, very large pupils with a thin yellow iris around the pupils. Must be what slug eyes look like, he thought to himself as he turned back to Talia and smiled and sat down. So what's your first question? He asked, staying in sage mode so he could continue to be able to sense. How did you bring that slug here and then make it disappear? She asked, as she had many more but might as well start at the beginning. That is called the summoning jutsu. By signing a contract with blood, you become able to summon animals of that contract to aid you in battle. You can only sign one, but I'm different as I can sign multiple. The first one I summoned was the slug contract, he said, showing her the contracts. Can I sign one? She asked, and he nodded. Yes, you can later, but as you do not have chakra, it would be pointless, he explained, making her grumble. What's with the markings and weird eyes? She asked, weirded out by his eyes a bit. Naruto chuckled as he rolled his eyes slightly. No one ever gets used to the eye part, he thought as he held out a hand, allowing numerous birds land on it. The marking and eyes are a sign that I am one with nature. This is sage mode. By drawing in nature energy and channel through myself, I can wield nature's energy and it will increase my normal strength to insane levels. It also makes me empathic and increases my technique's strength, he said, petting the blue jay that landed on his horn. The satyrs and dryads would just love you, she said, making Naruto laugh. After you were trapped in the tree, I used my bear sensor abilities to read if you were alive in the tree. They had asked me how, and I told them I was a sage, and they nearly jumped me, he said, making her giggle before it faltered and she frowned. Wait, are my friends allowed to know I'm alive? She asked as Naruto frowned and shook his head. If they were to know right now, your father would get wind and trap you away in the tree again, or possibly worse, he said, as he didn't know how the paranoid king would react. So they all think I'm trapped? She asked as Naruto nodded solemnly. It is to keep you and them safe for now. You can always rejoin them after your clone I put in the tree gets removed, he said, as he didn't think it will be anytime soon considering it just happened. He widened his eyes as he quickly stood up, feeling an energy source coming towards them while he drew his katanas and readied himself. Once Yamato was out, wisps of golden light rolled off it while Ten no Kuroi Hano had wisps of black flames. Yamato's blade was pure silver while Ten no Kuroi Hano had a blood red color to it. He didn't know how to use then, but he had used too much of his new cloaked form and he wasn't fully used to using Shinju's potent chakra just yet. Don't worry, kid, as long as you don't try to use their abilities you will be fine, but watch out, this energy signature is that of a god or goddess, Shinju explained, making Naruto worry a bit more. It didn't take long, as seconds later a woman appeared before him. She had long blonde hair with what looked to be wheat weaved into it while she wore a tan toga and had a kind look on her face, but he was still on guard. Relax, son of chaos, I mean you and the child of my brother, no harm, she said with a kind smile. I am Demeter, goddess of agriculture and some of nature. I only came as I felt someone access nature and it piqued my interest, she said, making Naruto sheath the swords. I will tell you as long as you swear on the river Styx not to reveal Talia being free, he said before she quickly swore to his terms. I can access nature as I am a sage. I didn't know it brought attention to me. What other gods or goddess did I notify? He asked, slightly worried of blowing their cover. I would be the only one who could feel it, maybe Artemis, but she couldn't care less as she is focused on hating men, Demeter explained as she smiled and waved it off, putting him at ease. I wish you two good luck. I personally voted against turning Talia into a tree, but I was outvoted as only Poseidon, Hermes and Athena voted against it, she said with a frown. Thank you for trying, but do not worry, I will keep her safe, he said in a serious tone as he slightly bowed his head to her. Demeter smiled, thankful for his respect before she snapped her fingers. I gave you both permission to grow crops at any time as you can't survive on hunting alone, and I can tell you have the power to grow things, she said with a smirk before she flashed away. Talia let out a breath of relief as she was happy the goddess wouldn't say anything to her father before Naruto went to the scroll and unsealed bedding for the both of them. Get some sleep, Talia, you will need it for tomorrow. I will go to bed in a while as I need to do some well-needed tasks, he explained, getting a yawn from the girl as she took off her trench coat and laid down for bed. Once she was out, he unsealed the elemental scrolls. He would work on his eyes later, but first he wanted to expand his arsenal. He had been a one-trick pony for too long and he needed more skills. He created 600 clones easily, divide into 6 groups of 100. Each group will one element and the final 100 get to work on Mokuden, as we need to be able to create crops to eat, he ordered as they saluted and headed off. After they went off, he took out some kenjutsu scrolls and under the tutelage of Shinju got to work on learning how to wield two swords in battle. Next morning, Talia woke to the sound of cooking and the scent of what smelled of French fries or something along those lines. She opened her eyes to see multiple Narutos cooking multiple dishes using what seemed to be flowing metal, which at closer inspection turned out to metal sand. "Mornin' Talia, don't worry boss, we'll wake up soon," the Naruto she figured to be a clone said, motioning towards the bedding next to hers as she saw Naruto snoring underneath. "You can control the elements as well?" she asked with a confused frown as her hand was hid away before she could steal any food. "Yeah. Fire, water, earth, wind and lightning as well other mixtures as you can see behind us," he said, pointing to the clones that were drawing up crops and trees like they were nothing. "Wow, you are powerful," she said, clearly impressed. "Only recently. I used to be dead last in my class and was until I finally got serious with training," he said with a shrug of his shoulders. "Why must grandma shine so brightly?" The real Naruto groaned as he got out of bed wearing only pajama pants and a sleeveless muscle shirt. "I think Apollo controls the sun in this realm," one clone said, making him dispel the clone muttering something about how why all of his clones had to have his smart mouth. "So what are we going to start on first?" she asked with a giggle as a clone plated food and gave it to her. "We start with combat training and then eventually we will start on chakra," he said, getting the young girl excited as he started to eat some of the food. "But first, where is Zetsu?" he asked, putting on his kimono top while Talia was confused. "Over here, Naruto." Talia heard a voice call out and turned towards it and promptly screamed. The thing was a black blob with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. The blob seemed to frown as it slithered over to Naruto and went up his sleeve. Naruto chuckled as he turned the sleeve towards her so the thing could frown at her. Was the scream necessary? "I know I am different looking than everyone, but I'm not that scary," Zetsu said in an upset tone. "Oh, relax, Zetsu, can you think of anyone who wouldn't freak out after seeing you the first time?" he asked, making Zetsu grumble. "Talia, meet my brother." He says the last part confused, but Zetsu just shrugs, making his sleeve ruffle. "He was created by my mom. He's part parasite, part plant and some other confusing stuff," he said, chuckling. "If he had his original body he could move on his own, but I think it got destroyed, so I'd have to grow one and it isn't very inconspicuous," he said as Talia nodded confusedly. "So let me get dressed and go with a clone to the training area, okay?" he said as she nodded and finished up her breakfast before running off. Naruto smiled as he watched her run off while he went to change. He unsealed some clothes, deciding to change things up. He put on a black kimono closed with an orange obi with orange hakama pants. His swords were strapped to his waist, both on his left side. He also sealed away his headband as he really didn't feel like wearing it. He walked to the area to see Talia wielding her spear and shield while she was bouncing on her feet in excitement. He chuckled and held her head to calm her down. "So what are we going to do first?" she asked as she knocked his hand away off of her head. Naruto chuckled as he drew out Yamato, not wanting to accidentally burn her as he decided to get a test of her skills. "Come at me with the intent to kill. I need to see your skills so I know where to start before I give you the weapon I have in mind for you," he said, inspecting Yamato and wielding the sheath in his left hand. Talia frowned before he chuckled and waved her off. "Don't worry, you aren't going to kill me, I just need to see you unbound," he said, getting a nod from the punk girl. He watched as she took a deep breath and dashed at him with a spear thrust. He easily dodged it only to jump over a shield bash she did as she spun on her heel. She tried to thrust her spear at him again as he was in midair only for him to block it by bashing it down with the sheath and spun around, striking her shield with the blade hard, sending her skidding back. She got back up quickly only to have to immediately dodge a swing from Naruto with his sheath. She ducked under a slash and stabbed upwards in an attempt to hit him, but he dodged it by tilting his head to the side. He quickly kicked her shield with a fraction of his super strength and sent her tumbling backwards into a tree. She raised her head to feel his blade at her throat before he slid it back in the sheath and tied it back onto his left side. "You did very good, Talia. Better than I expected, though a spear is quite unnatural for you," he said as he helped her up with a smile. "How is it unnatural? I fight pretty well with it," she said, upset with a frown before he ruffled her hair and smiled down at her. "Now do not get angry at me as I do not mean it offensively, but you are a girl," he said, confusing and slightly pissing her off. Females are much more graceful. No pun intended. You have more flexibility and can almost dance in battle. Males are very stiff and rigid. The only reason I'm not is that I was trained heavily by a clan that taught me a lot. Also, a spear is a rigid weapon, while yes, you have skill with it, but it doesn't suit your potential, he said, making her understand and calm down. The lack of static electricity was a sign of it easily. Well then, what am I supposed to use? My father gave me these. It's the only thing he's ever given me, she said as she looked up at him, making Naruto frown. He sighed as he crouched down to her level and looked her in the eye. Talia, while yes, your father gave you these, but isn't this a replica of Aegis, Athena's shield? And the spear a replica of the spear Hera gave to her daughter long ago? He asked, making Talia notice and frown. He basically gave me these copies, nothing really original. She asked, confused, as he nodded. Your father is a lazy man. I'm sorry, but it's true. I have no respect for the man who turned his own daughter into a tree. It is very backwards, but that is why I saved you. I don't want you to grow up in that backwards camp or being stuck due to your idiotic father, he said, making her smile. Now how about I give you something more suited for you, something that with adequate training you could give me a run for my money, he said, exciting the 12-year-old girl who was almost bouncing on her feet. He chuckled as he unrolled the scroll until he got to the weapon section and unsealed a scroll that read, 7 Swords of the Mist, on it. He smiled as he unsealed 2 blades slightly shorter than his. They had no sheath and she could easily see why, as 2 fang-like protrusions poked out from each blade, one near the top on one side and a lower one on the opposite side. They had golden handles and blue cloth wrapped around them. He smiled as he twirled the blades around in his hands after he sealed everything else back up. He turned to Talia and pointed the blades towards her, not in offense, to show her. These, Talia, are the Kiba blades, the twin lightning fangs, he said as he made lightning course through the blades with a smirk. Talia smiled and bounced excitedly at the sight while he smiled, but then got a serious look on his face that calmed her down as well. Now listen here, Talia, you will have to earn these blades. I am letting you use these. If I feel you are misusing them, I will take them back, he said, making the girl frown but nod reluctantly. All she could think about was becoming stronger and more power, and just as she finished that thought, Naruto bopped her on the head. Get those power-hungry thoughts out of your head, Talia, he said, making the girl grumble, upset that she let her fatal flaw flare up. Don't worry, I'll beat that fatal flaw out of you over the course of time, he said with a chuckle, making Talia smile until she noticed something. Wait, if you are from a different pantheon, how do you know so much about the gods and the hero stuff? She asked, confused, as it was a bit odd. Finally noticed that. Well, when my grandmother sent me over, she gave me full knowledge on this realm and its history. She felt sending me in here blind would be idiotic, he said as Talia accepted the answer before he handed her the blades. Now you should be able to send your natural lightning through it, but it won't make the swords sharper, just more like lightning. When I give you chakra, we can work with sending it through the blades, he explained, exciting the girl once more. Now I am assigning a clone to you to help teach you the stances with that blade. Follow them and only move on once you believe you have gotten it memorized. Do not rush since we have more than enough time, as this is only the first day of training, he said, getting a serious look from the girl. What about you? What are you going to do? She asked, curious, as he smiled. Well, I am going to practice my jutsus that I've been learning currently, and I don't want to harm you if I accidentally do it wrong, he explained as she nodded while she headed off with a clone. Do you think it is wise to give her power, Naruto? As you stated, her fatal flaw from what I can see is her thirst for power, Zetsu said with a frown as Naruto sighed. I know, but I believe I can teach her what Haku taught me long ago, that you truly become most powerful when you protect your precious ones. I believe in her and trust her. She can overcome that flaw, he said as he walked off into the forest. Well, I am going to keep watch. Best not to leave her with a clone, Zetsu said as he slithers out and back towards Talia while Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Okay. Be good and don't scare her, he yelled out with a chuckle, making Zetsu grumble. As he got to the clearing, he opened up the jutsu scrolls the clones had unsealed for him. He created the same number as last time, but this time he added another 100. Same as last night, but I want 100 of you to work on chakra control. We need to keep our control over it, since having Shinju inside us, our reserves are growing more and more, so, he explained, getting nods from all as they went off to work. Once you get your control a tad bit better, we can work on the eyes of mine, Shinju said, getting a nod from Naruto. Also, as a review from last night, I found you aren't suitable for wielding 2 katanas at a time. You are better at using one at a time with a sheath or a chakra rod as a guard. Wielding 2 will not benefit you, he explained, while Naruto had to agree as he knew he wasn't nearly as flexible. Sure, he could do the stances and everything, but when he actually fought with them last night it felt weird and he wasn't nearly as natural at it as he expected Taliah to be. We will be going through the stances again and you will fight me, Aga and Shinju explained as he made Naruto create a shadow clone for him to possess. The clone's hair becomes long and dark gray, its eyes turned into the Shinju eyes he used in his cloaked form and the fingernails elongated into claws. Toss me Yamato, as today you will practice with Ten no Kuroi Hano, Shinju said as he stretched his limbs while Naruto unstrapped Yamato and tossed it only for him to easily catch it and draw it, making the light wisps turn silver. Naruto frowned as he drew Tenno An, abbreviation of Ten no Kuroi Hano, as that is a lot to type every time I refer to it, and held the sheath in his left hand in a reverse grip. Shinju instructed him for an hour or so until he decided it was time to test him again. Naruto's goal was to land a cut on the clone, but considering the clone had absolute vision and instincts greater than his, so it mostly would focus on guarding. Now today I will be only guarding, as you need offensive trained as opposed to defensive training, Shinju explained as he held Yamato in his right hand with the sheath tied to his waist while Naruto nodded and burst off, striking with the sheath. Shinju easily blocked in and flicked the blade away as Naruto tried to slice at his abdomen, as Naruto smirked and tossed the sheath up, momentarily distracting Shinju as he tried to slice him across the chest. Shinju went to block only to smirk as mid-slice, right before Naruto's blade met Yamato, Naruto dropped the blade and caught it in his left hand in a reverse grip and slashed lower than his guard was. He quickly evaded, but he noticed the cut on the clone's hakama pants. I got the idea from Katekyo Hitman Reborn. Yamamoto's 5th offensive stance of Shiger Soin Ryu. Named Samadare or Early Summer Rain. P.S. I do not own Katekyo Hitman Reborn either. Very ingenious tactic, but avoid using it when you are using the sheath, as you don't want to have to throw it up every time, he said with a smile as Naruto caught the sheath. Sorry, I just wanted to try something, but it worked somewhat. Caught you off guard, didn't it? He asked with a smirk as he dashed towards him. Shinju blocks every strike easily but found that Naruto was progressing nicely before they decided to stop once Taliah's clone dispelled. Shinju went back inside the seal and tossed him Yamato, which he strapped to his left side again as he put Tenno on the same side. Since he was only using one blade at a time, he wasn't sure why he should keep them on separate sides. He smiled as he walked over to see an exhausted Taliah who was smiling brightly at him. How'd I do? She asked, a bit nervous about how she did. Tell the girl she did great for a beginner. She is showing a tremendous amount of skill and talent, Shinju said, impressed at her level. Naruto smiled and relayed the message, making the girl cheer in joy as she almost fell but was caught by him while he chuckled. Let's go get some lunch and we can continue more after. This time I will be with you myself, watching as my clones are bound to dispel their progress at the jutsus and most likely give me feedback, he said as she nodded while he helped her get back to their campsite. The clones once again cooked for them as they decided to talk about themselves. He wanted to give her the Kakashi treatment of questions since she was going to be his student. So tell me, Taliah, what are some of your likes and dislikes? Dreams for the future and whatnot? He said with a kind smile. Taliah frowned a bit as she didn't want to bring up her past but decided to do it since he revealed his true heritage to her. Well, I like Green Day and the color black as well as my brother, she said with a frown before continuing. I don't like people who judge before meeting people, people who think they are better than everyone else and heights, she said the last part shyly. My dream is to train hard so I can eventually show my dad how much of an asshole he is, she finished up, and Naruto laughed with a proud nod. Very well put. Well, I like ramen, orange, my mother and family and a few friends back home. I dislike the villagers and also when people judge people before meeting them. As for a dream, it's more or less helping things here so I can relax, he said as the food arrived. After lunch, Naruto smiled as he sat under a tree with Zetsu, who had returned during lunch without him noticing while they watched as Talia went through the stances of the style that went best with the Kiba blades. She was doing great and seemed to have the flow of it, only messing up a few times but caught on quickly and fixed it. She wasn't a master by any means, but she had a great understanding of the basics and he could see her becoming strong with those blades. He could feel the influx of memories from the clone's training. He was making good progress with the elements, though wind was still easiest. His control was going great and he was getting to a point where he could use Tsunade's strength easier. Soon he'd have to start working on the Sharingan and Rinnegan abilities and tapping into his sword's abilities as well. He smiled as Talia finished with a nervous look on her face. "You are doing great, Talia. You'll become a great warrior quickly," he said, making her smile and jump in excitement. "She may be serious and focused at times, but I keep forgetting she is a 12-year-old girl," he thought to himself with a smirk as she was a sweet little girl. "So when do you think she can receive chakra?" he asked Shinju as he wanted his permission before gifting it to anybody, seeing that it was his gift. "Give her a week or two, maybe a month. I want to try and dial down that fatal flaw of hers before giving her chakra," Shinju said, getting a nod of agreement from Naruto. "So how goes your training with the clones?" she asked as he had filled her in on the clone's memory relay while they were eating. "Good, but my head is starting to hurt now," he said with a chuckle as he rubbed his head. "Well, that just means your training is working," she said before they both heard a massive beast roar and Naruto jumped to his feet and releasing Zetsu. "Stay with Talia. From what my clones have seen, it's the Nemean lioness," he said, getting a nod from Zetsu and a frown from Talia. "But I can help," she yelled as Naruto looked at her with a frown. "This is a beast with impenetrable fur. Even I will have difficulties with it," he said, looking her dead in the eye. "Stay here or Zetsu will make you," he said, making her pout and cross her arms before he looked towards Zetsu, who nodded, understanding him. Naruto dashed off, quickly arriving where his clones had been dispelled to see the beast sniffing around until its eyes land on him and it roared again. He quickly summoned a Shikuho and took a deep breath while he eased into his cloak mode and summoned his truth-seeking orbs. "They won't work on the beast as its fur is one of the strongest defenses in this realm," Shinju told him as Naruto changed the orbs into plates to help defend him while he dashes towards the beast. He quickly had to duck under a slash from its paw before he hit under its chin hard with the Shikuho. The beast recoiled and went to pounce only to hit the plates that defended him. Naruto noticed whenever it roared he could see that its mouth seemed fleshy and not durable like the fur. He sent a few orbs towards it to distract it as he changed 3 into thin drills and make them spin fast, infusing wind chakra into them. He waited for it to roar again, and the second it did he fired the drills off like bullets. He smiled as they went straight through the roof of its mouth and the lioness recoiled in pain as the drills went all the way through its snout. "I need some way to finish this beast off. Maybe kill it from the inside," he thought with a smirk as an idea sprung up in his head that could work. Quickly he started to run his hands through the hand signs before slammed them down to pull out a seed the size of his fist. He coated it in a truth-seeking orb and dashed towards it as it roared. Just as its mouth fully opened he quickly fired it into its mouth and erased the orb as he put his hands in the tiger seal. "Wood style. Springtime ensnarement," he yelled as wooden tendrils burst from the lioness and made it burst into golden dust. All that is left behind was a cherry blossom tree and a golden furred trench coat that reminded him of his father's coat. He picked it up and sealed it away, frowning at the cherry blossom tree. It wasn't that he hated them, but now they brought up bad memories of Sakura. He sighed as he walked back to Talia to see her still pouting. "Look, Talia, I'm sorry for leaving you behind. I just didn't want you to get hurt, as yes, you are getting skilled, but a sword is little to no use. It can't be cut and is most likely immune to any and all outside elements," he said, making her sigh. "Fine. Next time something attacks camp you can help," he said, tossing the cloak at her. "Wear that instead of the black coat. I'd rather you have an impenetrable coat so I have to worry less when I'm not near," he said, making her smile as he ruffled her hair. "Thanks, Naruto," she said as she put it on and twirled around. "Wait, how did you kill it?" she asked, curious as to how exactly he killed the Nemean lioness, a powerful monster. He chuckled and rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. "Well, I kinda made a tree bust from inside it and shatter it from the inside out." It was very difficult to do as I had to make chakra penetrate its cloak, which was quite thick, he said, making her jaw drop. He basically exploded it, she thought to herself as she shook her head. Geez, let's hope PETA doesn't find out, she said with a giggle as Naruto chuckled and nodded. Come on, let's rest for a bit before dinner, he said as they walked back, but not before he let Zetsu back in his sleeve. As they get back at the camp, he summoned more clones to start on dinner as they sat down. I think we should get moving to another forest or something, as the Nemean lioness has bound to get the god's attention, he said, making her frown. We have no way of getting around though unless you have a motorcycle or car sealed away in there, she said, making him stroke his chin in thought. I could always sign the hawk contract, but flying would get the asshole's attention. Maybe the wolves or foxes could work. He thought out loud as he unsealed the contracts. Go for wolves first or else they might get angry. Foxes and hawks are laid back, but it should be fine if you show them my eyes, Shinju pointed out, making Naruto unroll the wolf one and sign it. Okay Talia, keep the coat on as I summon the wolves, he said, getting a nod from her as she pulled it close. He ran through the seals and slammed his hands down with his eyes active. Summoning jutsu. Wolf contract, he yelled out as he summoned a wolf roughly the size of a horse. Who dares summon the wolf clan with another contract signed, it said, staring at Naruto until he noticed his eyes and jumped back. Lord S. Shinju. It acts in a worried tone as Naruto nodded. Yes, he is inside me and my grandfather. I have use of his eyes and he allows me to have multiple contracts as he is the primordial of all beasts, he said, making the wolf nod and huff. Fine, I will inform the clan though some will be upset you didn't sign us first, it said before it dispelled, and he turned back to Talia. Well, I think that went better than I expected since I was honestly expecting him to attack, he said as Talia nodded. We can leave tomorrow morning. I'll have clones pack up once we are done here in the morning, okay? He asked, getting a nod in return. Naruto and Talia enjoyed their dinner before she went to bed a bit after. He sighed as he stared up at the sky before he smiled. Ever since he escaped, things have been a little hectic, but in a good way. Better than being locked up and be in a place that everyone except for a very select few hated him. He just hoped he could keep Talia safe. She didn't deserve this crap just because of who her father was. Then he thought back to what Demeter said. Only Poseidon, Athena and Hermes voted to save her besides Demeter. I'll have to be careful when traveling or else we might run across others who didn't vote to save her and they would most likely report it to the asshole, and I really don't want to get into a fight with that man, he thought with a frown as he looked down to Talia. He felt a weird feeling like he needed to make sure she was happy at all costs. That's a parental instinct and it's sweet of you. I could feel negative emotions rolling off her when you brought up the past. She most likely has had a not so great childhood. The fact you are trying to make up for it is very kind of you, Shinju said with a smile as Naruto chuckled. So I'm like a dad to her. I can deal with that, he thought with a smile as he summoned 2 clones to watch over them. Next morning, Naruto woke up early so he could get everything fixed in the clearing, fixing the ground to hide any electrical burns on the ground. Call him overcautious, but he didn't care. He waited a bit before woke Talia up, who was groggy while she glared at him. Relax Talia, you can try and sleep on the wolf, he said as the clones sealed everything into the scroll and Talia's blades into a personal scroll for her to carry around. Since they don't have sheaths, he'd rather them be sealed up. They traveled down the road until Naruto felt a presence behind them. He unsheathed Yamato and pointed it at the neck of the one behind him and moved Talia behind him even as she had the pelt on. He wanted to make sure she was safe. The man had sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. He wore a business suit and had a cell phone with a caduceus as the antenna. Relax man, I mean you no harm, he said as the snakes move on the caduceus. Hermes, what are you doing here and how did you find us? He asked as he kept the blade to the god's neck. Hermes sighed as he pointed to the road. I'm the patron saints of travelers and roadways. I felt your presences the second you set foot on the road. Do not worry though, I swear on sticks not to reveal you to Zeus or any other god, he said, making Naruto quickly sheath the blade. So what do you want? Naruto asked as Talia poked her head out from behind him while Hermes smiled and straightened his suit. I came here to help. I can feel Demeter's blessing as she most likely helped you with food. I just want to give you safety while traveling and on the roads, he said, holding up a hand and snapped his fingers. It will also hide your presence more from other gods and goddesses long as you don't directly enter their domains, like the sea for Poseidon or a fancy clothes store for Aphrodite, he said, chuckling at the jab at Aphrodite. Thank you, Hermes, and thank you for voting to keep Talia safe. Tell the others who voted to save her she is under my protection, but make them swear not to reveal anything beforehand, he said, getting a smile and nod from Hermes. If you all ever need anything, give me a call, Hermes said as he handed him a business card before flashing away. It's okay. No god or goddess will take you away, he said with a smile as he calmed the nervous girl while she nodded and held his arm as they walked. They eventually get to a point where it's safe to summon, where she begrudgingly let go of his arm as he summons a wolf the size of a horse. This one had pure white fur and violet eyes. The wolf turns to him and looks at him dead in the eyes before he flashed the Shinju's eyes, making her nod. My name is Junsweena. What may I do you for, young ones? The wolf asks in a female tone as he bowed to her. I need travel as I need to get as far away from here as possible. I would like if we could go southwest, he said as he showed her a map and traced his finger along until he got to Oregon. Junsweena thought for a second before she nodded with a hum. I will allow you to ride me, but do not make it a common occurrence, she said as Naruto nodded. Of course not, we are just in a hurry, he said as they got atop the wolf, Talia sitting behind him and holding on as he used chakra to stick to the wolf. I am one of the fastest in the clan. I can get you to this Oregon place you showed me in a few hours' time, she said as she dashed off. Talia held on tight as the wolf ran. None of the cars or people noticed as a massive wolf ran through the road. The mist was a powerful thing and a powerful illusion. It made him wonder if maybe he should teach Talia to manipulate it, as apparently his grandmother left him scrolls on how to do it. It would help hide her from beasts and keep mortals from being in the crosshairs. 2 hours later they arrived in the forests of Oregon, and as they got off, Naruto bowed to Junsweena. Thank you greatly. And do not worry, this was indeed a one-time thing, he said, getting a nod. Thank you for that. Until next time, summoner, she said before dispelling. He wanted this done quickly as he summoned 5 clones to unpack everything and another to use Henge to go to town and gather some clothes and other essentials, maybe buy some food with some money he had gotten from his grandmother. He smiled as he turned to Talia and unsealed her blades for her. Go and train some as I start making breakfast, he said, getting a nod as she left with one of his clones again while he went to hunt and left Zetsu with his clone. He summoned his truth-seeking orbs and turned them to arrows. Manipulating the orbs was easy, making them go far away from him was more difficult. He sat on a branch and waited silently for an animal to cross his path. It didn't take long, as just as a deer arrived he fired the arrow into the heart of the deer just as a silver arrow hit it seconds later. He dashed to his kill and took out the silver arrow, keeping the orb-turned arrow inside. He frowned as he saw 3 girls in similar gear, silver and green hunting outfits. Hunters of Artemis, he groaned mentally. Why did he have to run into the man-haters, he thought as they drew their bows. Get away from our kill, male, one said. She had olive-colored skin and pitch-black hair with ocean-colored eyes. Her outfit was different from the others as she had a silver circlet on her head. I hit the target first, meaning the kill is mine, he said, pointing to the arrow he had inside. There is no way you shot it first, one girl said, glaring at him as he sighed. Well, too bad, it is my kill, he said as he drew the arrow out and turned it back into an orb, confusing the group greatly. My name is Naruto Otsutsuki, son of chaos, this is my kill. I used my arrow to kill it, he said, already annoyed at these girls' attitudes as the two drew their knives until the main girl stopped them. As much as I would love to castrate a male, sadly he is right, she said before getting a smirk, but I have a feeling he will give it to us, she said as Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. And why would that be? He asked before dodging a volley of arrows, catching them all in his hands. Because I am here, foolish boy, he heard a female voice call out before he turned to see Artemis with her bow drawn. Really? You are going to fight me over a stupid kill of a deer? This is ridiculous, he said as he groaned and tossed the caught arrows down on the ground. Artemis glared at him already feeling her trying to turn him into an animal to no effect, which seemed to piss her off. Yes, as my lieutenant was on the trail of the beast first and you stole the kill, she said, drawing back the arrow and taking sight. Oh, for Cammy's sake, just fucking take it. Too much trouble to go against the annoying man-hater squad, he said as he walked away. You dare speak of to me like that, you dirty male. She yelled, firing the arrow at the speed of a bullet only for him to catch the arrow easily without even looking. Leave me alone or you will regret it, he said as he broke the arrow and summoned the Shinju's eyes. Artemis glared and dashes for him only for him to block her strikes with Yamato and use the same technique he created in his spar against Shinju that he named it Hidden Vine. Artemis never saw it coming as she was shot backwards, crashing through multiple trees, as even though he hit her with the back of the blade she did at most she have a few broken bones. He sighed as he turned to the others as they stared in shock. Just leave, this is getting too annoying, he said in a bored tone as he kept Yamato out in case Artemis got up, which was a good choice as seconds later he dodged Artemis as she appeared behind him. Naruto weaved around her and hit her with the hilt of the sword on the back on the neck, knocking her out again while he tossed her to the lieutenant. Apparently, just leave me be, he said as he disappeared in a burst of speed. The second he got back to camp he was immediately cursing his luck. He was supposed to be hiding from the gods and goddess and he kept running into them. He would need to keep strengthened clones nearby to protect him and Talia, since he would be damned if Artemis reported back to the asshole. He arrived back as Talia smiled at him. So how'd hunting go? She asked as she was starving while he sighed. My hunt was stolen by some spoiled hunters of Artemis, he said, making Talia scowl. What? And you just let them steal the food? She yelled as he holds up a hand to silence her. It was 3 hunters, including the lieutenant, and then Artemis appeared and I knocked her out. Though she was enraged, if she was more in control she would be a difficult opponent, he explained, making her huff in annoyance. Then what are we going to eat? She asked as he unsealed some food as Zetsu crawled back to him. Luckily we have leftovers that I can heat up, he said as he set a clone to do it before he pulled out a tag and started writing down a seal with the help of the crescent moon mark on his palm. What are you doing? Talia asked as she peeked over his shoulder while he smirked at her. It's a seal that will hide your appearance just in case the hunters roll up on us, he said as he rolled up her sleeve and places it on her arm before rolling the sleeve down. He channeled chakra into the sleeve and her appearance instantly changed. Her black hair turned red and her blue eyes turned violet as he modeled it after his mother's mortal aspect. There, it should help keep you hidden if they spy on us, he said, getting a nod from her before they started to eat breakfast. After breakfast they cleaned up and he was going to train her some more until a barrage of arrows surrounded them. Talia drew her blades but didn't charge them as she felt it would give her away before they both frowned as they both knew those arrows. As seconds later a pissed off looking Artemis walked out of the forest. Ah crap, he said with a groan and a flurry of mental curses. Safe to say he didn't quite have his godly luck while in this realm. So this is what Tsunade felt like, he thought with a groan as things went from bad to worse. Thank you.